King P here.
And Steelio7, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Metropolis. We were honoured to be joined by Ellie Gibson this week, who you may know from Go 8-Bit, which she used to be the intelligent one on, but she's also one of the Scummy Mummies and used to be a writer for Eurogamer.
And wrote, first step for her career was actually writing game manuals for PlayStation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to This Week in Metropolis.
Welcome to episode 4, Matt. Of This Week in Metropolis of season 6, and we are very honoured to be joined by the one and only Ellie Gibson. Ellie, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Well, Ellie, you are a former. Was it a? What was your actual role at?
Exotic dancer. Oh no, sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Not that one. Eurogamer, where I guess was your gaming influence kind of started.
Yeah, I was the deputy editor at Eurogamer, I think, by the time I left. So I was at Eurogamer for nearly a decade. And before that, I used to write the manuals at PlayStation. So, and then I worked at a rubbish games magazine for a bit. But I've been in video games. I've been working video games for about 20 years, basically.
Is that rubbish games magazine still in circulation?
It was barely in circulation when I worked on it. It was, this is how little it was in. It was called PSG, I think it was, PlayStation Gamer. And we also did one called Station Gamer. But I remember you couldn't actually buy them in WH Smith's. Because the publishing company was very, very tight, and you had to pay. There was some weird thing, you had to pay WH Smiths for the privilege of stocking your magazine. Right. And Smiths didn't even have it. So like the premier news agents in Britain did not sell our magazine. That's how little the circulation was. And and then eventually we wrote an issue. By the end, it was down to me and one other bloke, one of the journalists. We were producing the whole thing ourselves, and we wrote this issue, and the copies never arrived in the office. They never arrived, and we kept saying, where's the magazine? And they were like, oh, there's a hold up at the printers, oh, there's a hold up with the designer, oh, there's a thing. And then they said, oh, the warehouse with all the copies in has burned to the ground. And we were like, oh, that's okay. And then about a week after that, they came and they said, actually, that we made that up, and there is no magazine. We can't afford to print it, and there is no more video games.
God, why didn't they just say that in the
I don't know.
first place?
It was very strange. I mean, I might have been a bit annoyed, but I wouldn't have jumped out the window. Do you know what I mean? Been like, that's all right. It's a PlayStation magazine, guys. It's okay. It's not baby. Do you know what I mean? And then they said, would you like redundancy, or would you like a job on Simply Cards and Papercraft magazine? And I said,
choice.
I said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And they pushed the check they had already written across the table saying, we thought you'd say that. And I said, why did you bloody ask me then? So that was that. It was an adventure.
But I mean, working in Eurogamer for, like you said, nearly a decade, that must have been an awesome job. I mean, me and Matt, I know we both grew up being huge video game fans. You know, I was a Nintendo guy, moved into PlayStation, would have dreamt of working within gaming. How was that for you? You must have loved it.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I still remember getting my first job in games, which was at PlayStation, and I answered an advert in the newspaper because it was the 1800s for a copywriter at PlayStation, and I think they told me 300 people had applied, and and I had to go through different rounds, and it was like, I don't know, trying to get on Love Island, I'd imagine. But the day they told me I got that job, I always say I felt like Charlie getting the keys to the chocolate factory. I was oh, me? Thank you, Mr. Wonka. And then my boss said, stop calling me that. And so that was magic. And Eurogamer was a different, because obviously PlayStation, when I joined the week, PS2 launched as well. Really? So it was this super, it was super cool and awesome, and it was the rock and roll age. And it was this quite big company. But when I joined Eurogamer, it was in Rupert's parents' house. Like, that's where the office was. It was in their little extension. There was these 8 blokes sitting around their little computers. Rupert's mum, Barbara, popping in to ask if anyone wanted any tea. It was proper like it was proper roots. So to be there for so long and then build it up, you know, we built up the website, and then the Eurogamer Expo came along. The EGX guys built that up and built up so to see it grow like that and be part of that, yeah, I'm hugely proud of that. And it was a brilliant time, and everyone was great, and we were proper mates. We still are mates, you know. And yeah, I was the only girl for, I think, very much almost till the end, but I never was made to feel inferior or not one of the gang, or that I wasn't as good as them. So yeah, it was great. I loved it.
And was it kind of from gaming? Is that kind of, did you grow up being a games enthusiast, and that's kind of why you went down that path?
Yeah, I grew up playing games. The first one I remember playing is Jet Set Willy at a friend's house. And then it was years before we actually had a machine in the house, because my parents didn't have any money and I had to convince them and all that. So yeah, but I remember being like, the first time I ever saw a game, I remember going, oh, this is, you can make the man do the thing. This is cool. And it's brightly coloured and it makes funny noises. And I just really liked it. So yes, definitely grew up playing games. And then I did an English degree at university, which of course is the degree people who can read but don't know what else to do. So I did that. But to be honest, I read less than I played video games. And I got a original PlayStation while I was at uni, and basically just played Tomb Raider for 3 years. And then so I came out of university and worked as a TV researcher for a little bit, but I didn't really know what to do with myself, and literally just randomly saw that advert for PlayStation and randomly got it. And 20 years later, you know, what a pity that was. Look at where we are now. What a great shame. So incredible. Yeah, it's just been luck, really. Yeah.
Matt, you had a question about the manuals, didn't you?
Yeah, so I read that you started sort of doing manuals and so on, which to me,
I thought you were going to say I've read some of your finest work.
Yeah, that's it. I've got it here.
Love it. Yeah.
Well, the thing about manuals, I was saying to James that it's just like a forgotten thing with a lot of games now. And there have been instances, I used the example with James the other day, that sometimes the boys would be playing a game and they go, oh, Dad, how do I do this? And it's that instinct, being slightly older, think, oh, look in manual, there isn't a manual. And then having to Google it and find out how to do it. It's, you know, I used to quite enjoy a games manual to thumb through.
I used to read them like books. I would get on the bus home from Bromley with my new video game.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Like a novel. Yeah.
The excitement of seeing, oh, wow, you can do that. Oh, if you press that happens. Brilliant.
Yeah, it was great. But I do feel like, and if it weren't for manuals, I might not work in games now. I don't know. But I don't want to sound like too much of an old buffer going, oh, in the olden days, when we had to wash our own clothes. Yeah. I liked it when we had to send children up chimneys. That was better, wasn't it? It wasn't better at all. Right. And I definitely have moments of frustration where I don't know what to do in a game, where I remember that. And when you were stuck on something or you didn't, and it wasn't in the manual, that was a moment of horror. Yeah. So, but yeah, I do like an old buffer. I do bemoan the fact that my children now, they just have different expectations of the world. If they want a book or a toy, they know that potentially I don't, but potentially I could just order it for them on Amazon. It will get here tomorrow, if not tonight by 10 p.m. You know, or that they can just look something up on the internet if they don't know it, or you know. But I've got a new thing now. We definitely don't need manuals as well, because I've recently discovered Twitch at the age of 43. Yeah.
I'm 35 and I've still not made the transfer over to Twitch. I just can't bear it. Yeah.
Well, you know, I feel like, you know how most middle-aged women reach their sexual peak in their 40s. I feel like for me, this is my gaming peak, Twitch. I feel like. So yeah, but I go and I play games, like I play Assassin's Creed Valhalla on a Friday night now on Twitch, and I get increasingly drunk over the course of a few hours, and I get stuck all the time because I'm quite rubbish at it, and these people help me. These people like watch me play, and then there's a guy called Jomba who's especially helpful, and he'll be like, no, you need to go and get the key from that dude, and then you can open the jump. And like someone else will go, try shooting the window, try shooting the stained glass, and I'm like, and it's become a group effort, and
that's
frankly
so cool.
it's made the game a lot more enjoyable and less stressful.
That's fantastic, because for me, when Twitch first came out, I was thinking, what is this? What? How's this fit in? You know, I just couldn't get it in my head, thinking, how's this work? And sort of Ben, my oldest, growing up now, he was very much into Fortnite and he's into Overwatch and that, and sort of started watching bits of Twitch, and then it was just that awakening really of like what you've just said of, oh, it's the same as sitting in your living room with your mates and they'd say to you, oh, do that or click that or go there, and that collective sort of thought, isn't it? But they might be in Canada or they may be in wherever, and it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the true internet as such, you know, bringing everyone together.
Absolutely. And I didn't really understand that community aspect until I'd done it. Absolutely. And what I also like is as well, it's not just video games. There is a small but growing food channel, for example. I love food. I'm really interested in cooking. So sometimes I just watch Korean men eat fried chicken. Or sometimes I watched on Burns Night, I watched a lady in Scotland make haggis from scratch. Wow. And it was just me and this other bloke from Missouri. And we just had a lovely chat. We just had the three of us just had a nice little chat. And I was like, this is obviously it's insane and it's super weird. But it's also marvellous. It's a proper modern marvel. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, exactly. It is the modern way, even down to things like streaming platforms now. I mean, on Disney Plus, you can now do a watch along, so you can invite so many of your friends to all watch the same thing at the same time. I mean, you could have just done that anyway with synchronized watches, but it's mad how everything's going that way now.
Disney Plus, the content is amazing as well. But although last night I said to my 9-year-old, he was like, oh, let's watch a family TV show, blah blah blah. So I was like, oh, what about WandaVision? He was like, no, it looks boring. It's like, what are you talking about? If I had been 9 years old in 1986, it would be like a magic spell had been cast on my television.
It's amazing.
And in the end, sort of almost out of pique, I said, no, I'll tell you what we're going to watch. We're going to watch this. And I put on the first ever episode of Red Dwarf.
Classic.
And initially he was like, this is boring. I don't, because he's got 30 seconds of pension span. But I was like, no, we're watching it. Yeah. And at the end of it, he was like, can we watch another one? And I was like, yes, we can. Like, so his nerd education is coming along well.
I had that sort of experience with, they've got Terrorhawks on Amazon Prime. And that was something I'd forgot about. I remember watching it as being quite, I can't remember what I've been,
Saturday
5 or
afternoons,
6.
yeah.
And watching that and remembering all the characters. And I completely forgot about it. And then just on the recommended on Amazon Prime, it said Terror. I was like, oh my God. And got my youngest to watch that. And he is similar experience. Oh, this is going to be rubbish. I don't want to watch this. And then, oh, can I watch the next one? That was quite good.
But Terrorhawks is terrifying. It's
it is.
Dreadful. I think, I'm just saying, benign neglect is a thing. That's what I'm saying, Matt.
Where do you sit with this, Ellie? Because I mean, my 4-year-old, I had debates with my mates about letting him watch Into the Spider-Verse recently because I thought it might be a bit too violent, and then I watched it with him. There's a little bit that scares him, but other than that, now he thinks he is Miles Morales. So,
and beats you up on a regular basis.
And beats me, and I'm always the bad guy that he has to beat up.
Of course.
But like with gaming, obviously, with the whole aging regulations on that, do you have a little look at the games first and go, it's actually okay, my 9-year-old can play it or whatever?
Yes, that's the rule in our house. If my 9-year-old wants to download a game he's seen on the App Store, for example, that's 12, he has to come and show it to me. And to be honest with you, I don't play it necessarily, but I will watch the trailer and sort of gauge it on that. And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no. And the deal is that he has to respect it if it's a no, on the understanding that sometimes it'll be a yes. But if we're going to argue about it for hours, it's just going to be a flat no because I can't be bothered. I've literally said that to him. That's it, you know. And he can cope with that sort of rationality. But the older I get, and now I've got 2 kids, the more I just really think it comes down to individual children, and even within families. So my 6-year-old is much less squeamish, and he's much harder to nerve. That's not a phrase. He's much harder to sort of, he's much less easily unnerved. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, the 9-year-old, when he was 6, could be quite easily scared by stuff. So we went to see, I think, what's that, Zootropolis or something?
I love Zootropolis.
Love Zootropolis, yeah.
I've never seen, I wouldn't know because I've never seen all of it, because we had to take my child out of the cinema because there's a bit with a giant mole or something. And
they have they eat the flower bulbs, don't they? And it turns them vicious.
Yeah.
Isn't it? The predators
they all go
vicious.
A bit wild,
Yeah, so he really didn't like that, and he doesn't like. And even the other night, he read a thing in a book from the 80s, funnily enough, about someone being murdered with an ice skate, and he was really
wow.
It was
just some light reading.
Oh, he gave it was a children's book about these detective brothers who were like 12 and 20, and and someone gets stabbed, and it's all about where the blades, and oh god, I read it and I was like, yeah, that is a bit strong, love. I'll keep the book in my room, shall I? And he was like, yeah, okay. So I have to watch it a bit with him, whereas the 6-year-old just doesn't give a monkeys, really. The other day they really wanted to watch Endgame, and I was like, there's a lot of death in that, obviously, and
it's very intense,
spoilers,
as well, isn't
very
it?
intense. It is about the human race facing a massive challenge where a lot of them are wiped out by a mysterious thing. I don't know if now's the time to watch this.
No, definitely not.
But I thought about it, and Charlie was adamant, and he is a bit older now, and Joe's 6, and he totally gets that Joe gets quite annoyed, actually, if you're like, Spider-Man lives here, and he'll be like, Spider-Man's not real, how could he, sometimes I'm like, what? So anyway, my point is, I'm waffling, but my point is, I just think I certainly can't tell anyone what to do, because even with my own kids, I have to do it on a child by child, case by case basis, and just pay attention to what freaks them out, and I just think that's the only way to do it, right? Is that what you guys do?
Yeah. I know. So the difficult thing I find is that I think because games are very available with things like Game Pass and whatever, particularly with my oldest, it's like that never-ending chase of, oh, my friends are playing this game, my friends are playing that game, and then next week they're onto a different game. And there's that sort of very much a herd mentality, particularly when Fortnite first came out. I viewed him as a little bit too young to play it, and all his mates were playing it, and I was the sort of stickler for saying, no, you're not playing it until you're a little bit older, and then let him play it. But sort of even then, it was monitoring the Fortnite. For me, I think it's an amazing game. I love playing Fortnite, but in terms of the behavioural issues you get sort of with them, it's just that intensity. You're stuck on an island and you're basically fighting to survive, aren't you? And they all sit with it. He sits with his headset on and he's talking to his friends, and it's that intense conversation. And there were so many instances, particularly when he was younger, not now, but coming out of that and then taking that aggression sort of into the real world with him. And there are sort of things like that, and I do monitor. But there are friends of his that play Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto and things like that. And no way, and I always say, I've played those games and I know what they're like. There's no way at 12 you're playing those games, because that, for me, is too far as such, Particularly Grand Theft Auto. I know what goes on in Grand Theft Auto. I don't think a 12-year-old mind needs to see adult sort of content as such. But
Ellie, you done a live video last week, didn't you? Talking about the emotions. I mean, I see it with my 4-year-old now. Like, if he's playing Spider-Man, he comes out of it sometimes if he gets frustrated with a part of it. And the only bits he really does is swinging around the city anyway. But the whole kind of emotions that youngsters come away from gaming and the amount of time they're spending at the screen, is it right, is it wrong? And I'm sure, like most of us, kind of responsible parents, we kind of try to manage the time and make sure, like, that when you say enough is enough, that is time's up.
Yeah, but it's tough. It is really tough, and it's tough for a lot of people, because I get loads of messages about it, and it's tough for me as well. So that's so I have this Instagram now, Ellie Gibson Games, and I did a live Q&A with Philippa Perry, who's a psychotherapist, and it's still up there if you want to watch it. And she's amazing. She's just brilliant. Anyway, she wrote this book called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read, and it's all about the relationship with your child. But I wanted to ask her specifically about screens, and she said loads of things that I thought were really useful and brilliant. But some of the ones I thought that stuck out for me were screens themselves are not inherently bad for you. So it's not like the more you play screens, it's doing something terrible to the wiring in your brain that you can never fix. But it's more that the more time you spend on screens is less time you're doing something else, whether that's writing or playing football or cooking or whatever your kid likes. So I thought, God, yeah, that's a big one. And also she said some really interesting stuff about kids learn to manage their emotion at different ages. So yeah, my son is 9. And although he's, like I said, he's always been a little bit more cautious and a bit more easily scared by stuff. Like, but he knows that himself as well. He knows, like, he doesn't really ask for Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto more than once a year, because he knows I'll say no. But he also, I think there's a bit of him that knows it's not for him just yet. No. So he's actually really good at managing his emotions on Fortnite, and he rarely sort of loses it totally if he loses a game, and he plays quite cooperatively. But I've got a friend whose son is exactly the same age, who has huge screaming tantrums, throwing controllers, storming out the room, the whole banana. Now, that is not to say that my child is more advanced than that child, or there's something wrong with that child, or that Fortnite itself is inherently bad. That is to say that child is developing at a different time in that particular area to my child, and one day they will catch up, and there's many things that child is better at or whatever than my child that my child can't do yet. So but that mother knows that child, and she has had to say, do you know what, maybe we're going to give it another year before we go back to Fortnite, because maybe we're not quite there yet. And I don't know how else to do it, really. No,
and I think there's so much benefit in a lot of these games as well, and the sort of the team aspect and the cooperation and the almost like strategy and things like that. When I sit and listen to sort of the conversations that are being had, and they're planning, right, you go now, you pick that, here's this, you can have that, and it's amazing. There's so much. I think that's what people overlook. There's so much developmental elements to it, which are a huge benefit. And I think it's been for particularly to my oldest, it's been a lifeline during lockdown, being able to be on Xbox Live and speak to your friends and have that interaction. And that's where my youngest actually struggled quite a lot with, because he's at the age when they're not all on sort of, they've not all got games consoles or whatever, but he didn't really have that, whereas my oldest could put on a headset and all his friends are there, and whether they were playing on, in the same game or not, they could all be in a party and interact, which is wonderful.
I love it. I love listening to them, not so much with the Fortnite, he's a bot, get him, get in the shed, hide in the toilet. That does my head in a bit. But yesterday, and what I like as well is I'm quite lucky that my son has different friends who like different games. So he has Fortnite buddies, but he also has a mate who really doesn't like Fortnite, isn't into it. So they play Minecraft together, and I was just in the kitchen yesterday, and I could hear Charlie going, "Oh yeah, okay, no, hang on, I've got to go to bed. Oh, I haven't built a bed. Hang on, I've got to make a bed. All right, I'm going to bed." And I was like, "Oh my God, it's taken 9 years, but the child is putting himself to bed. This is the most wonderful game."
But why is he building a bed?
Oh, I don't.
I love Minecraft. I think Minecraft is incredible.
It's excellent.
It's a game. Yeah.
Well, switching from children gaming to adults gaming, the first time I had seen or heard of you, Ellie, was on Go 8-Bit, which again, me and Matt were huge fans of that. And I thought, please don't take this the wrong way, for me, you was the intelligent one on the show, and this is going to either make or break it. I often compared you as the female Richard Osman.
Oh,
have you heard that before? I
have indeed. Have you? Good. So you maybe haven't seen the episode with Richard Osman. Yeah, we did an episode where he was on one of the teams, and he and I actually, because I used to get that a lot, which I'm hugely flattered by, because I think he's amazing and I love him. And
also on a sense of humour wise, I think you've both got a very kind of dry sense of humour, which I think is where the similarities as well, not just on the intelligence front.
Oh, thank you. I take that as an absolutely enormous compliment. Enormous. And And it was really, he was such a lovely, very funny, and obviously very clever dude. And yeah, we did this bit on the show where we swapped, and he sat behind my little desk on the show, and I sat on the team, and we, you know, had some bants, obviously. And it was just, I loved it. And then when I got back to my little desk, he had actually, on one of my cue cards, he'd just written a lovely little note, just the sweetest little note, just saying, "You're brilliant, Richard." And I was just like, I've still got it. I kept it because it was I was just like, oh my God, that is such a nice, generous thing to say as well. So yeah, he's I'm more than honoured to be compared to him, because he's my actual hero apart from Oprah Winfrey. So yeah.
Did you, I mean, again, we grew up with kind of, for me, it was like Games Master was the last kind of big gaming show, and that seems like a lifetime ago. To go 8-bit was so kind of refreshing to have a gaming show to watch. You must have had loads of fun doing that.
Oh, I absolutely loved it. And yeah, like you, I loved Games Master. And actually, when I was at Eurogamer, I wrote an article about Games Master and how it came to be about and how it ended and stuff like that. And I interviewed almost all the principal people, I think everyone apart from Dexter Fletcher. So I interviewed the producer, Jane, and I interviewed Dominic Diamond and Dave Perry. There's still a little bit of, nobody's ever really gotten over that Mario 64 thing. It was one of my favourite things I ever wrote, because it was just so fun to write. So yeah, and then I met Steve and Sam. I went to see Go 8-Bit as a stage show and loved it. And I thought, well, you know, this is a great concept. Obviously, these boys aren't very talented. They're obviously incredibly stupid. So what they need is me. And maybe some Irish bloke
all together.
Just, you know, do the admin. But I thought I can make this something.
Star of the show.
Yeah. In no way did they then get a TV deal, and then I auditioned for the part of expert and got it. That's not whatever they tell you, whatever they say, that's not what happened.
Well, we jokingly said to Sam on the first episode of this series that we got him on for his gaming knowledge, and he was adamant that he was the non-gamer. We
proceeded to speak for a whole hour about gaming. So it's
Yeah, he knows more than he lets on, I reckon. But obviously not as much as me.
Was one of your highlights of Go 8-Bit, the episode that springs to my mind there was one, I can't remember who was on, but they were playing Aladdin, and you kind of went, I'll do this, and came on and won the race, so to speak, on that episode.
Yeah, absolutely nailed it, because Aladdin was on the SNES, it was the first game I ever completed. And to this day, it's still one of only about 12. So, I knew exactly what I was doing. Absolutely smashed it. Absolutely not a problem. If it had been like FIFA, we'd have been in a lot of trouble. Aladdin, I can do.
Aladdin was brilliant. I loved that on the SNES.
Fantastic game, yeah.
And am I right in thinking, if my memory serves me correct, there was 2 versions of that Aladdin game? I think you actually mentioned it. There was one that was specifically for Sega, which was slightly different from the one from SNES. Yes,
and I've never played the Mega Drive one, but I've played the SNES one extensively, and it's absolutely amazing. So I can only imagine it's hugely inferior.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd say
exactly.
So.
Now, last week we spoke to, we had Nathan Caton on the show, and when we was researching him, we found that he'd done a show called Video Game Nation many years ago, which even surprised him that we'd found out.
I think he barely remembered it.
Yeah, I don't think it must have been a blur. But again, when we was researching you actually were involved in that show. Is that right?
I created it. No, I didn't. I'm responsible for all video games too.
No one remembers it. Yeah. Just say you created it. It's fine.
Yeah, I just made it. I was on. I was a talking head on Video Game Nation, and it was a weird gig, because you used to go and it was filmed in weird places. Like it was filmed in a weird video games arcade in Peckham, which I liked because it was quite near my house, but it was very dingy and it did smell like a video games arcade, like you would expect it to smell. Yeah. And then I wouldn't really meet the other people very much because it was sort of one in, one out. So you might get a little bit of crossover. So I didn't get to hang out with Nathan, but I've seen his stand up and he's amazing. He's hilarious. But it was a fun little show. But before that, you definitely won't have heard of this, I promise you. Cool. I was on X League.
No,
I haven't heard of that.
No, what was that?
Oh my God, X League was X League was a channel on some terrible satellite channel that nobody had, and there was a show called, and I've only remembered it because I think just yesterday, if you ever look at my @Ellie Gibson Twitter, somebody retweeted some tweeted some screenshots of the show, and they had this show called, I think it was called Games Night or Games Night Review or something, and it was supposed to be like late night review on BBC Two, so it was like it was supposed to be like intellectual chat about video games.
Brilliant.
And you can tell from the they had like a panel of 4 people every week and a host, and the host was Paul Vale, and and you can tell from looking at the shots, it's all white people, and out of the 4 screenshots, everyone's white, and I am the only woman. Like that's what diversity was in 2007. That was fine. Just get Ellie on every 3rd episode. Diversity.
Tick the box.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Quite a lot of people. I didn't, but a lot of people used to get quite drunk before we started. And there was a famous episode where we had to play Rock Band, and I remember thinking at the time, this is bad. I don't think I should be doing this.
Yeah.
But I was younger, you know, and when you're younger and it's like, it's telly, and I was over it, and I was like, oh, just do it. And I'll try and find it for you and send it to you. But a website called UK Resistance did a whole piece just completely taking the piss out of it, going,
that sounds terrifying.
She wants to die. UK Resistance is an amazing website run by a guy called Gary Cutlack, who's a big Sega fan and an old games journalist, and it's my favourite games website of all time. It's hilarious. I don't think it's still going. I think he closed it down, but maybe you can find it on the Wayback Machine or something. But he did a bit, and he mentioned that I looked like I would kill myself, and he was right. So well done, Gary. You've nailed it.
Why do you think then that, I guess it's a running theme with a lot of game shows, apart from like Games Master was great, and I think it helps that everyone remembers it way back as such. I'm sure probably some weeks we watched that and thought, oh, it's a load of rubbish. But why do you think game related shows just don't quite gel quite often?
Well, it can be difficult to put games on the telly. I will tell you that for me, one of the big difficulties we had with Go 8-Bit was getting, which was not a challenge I was prepared for in any way, was getting the games companies to agree to put the games on. Yeah,
Sam shared that with us, that so many people just said no.
I was astonished by it, and I'd worked in games at that point for over a decade, and I was like, but as a journalist, you're ringing me up all the time, sending me messages all the time, asking me to promote your game and do this. And now
we're giving you the opportunity.
Yeah, you've got free advertising space on Dave, and it's all, oh, well, the licensing, and oh, I don't know, and it was so frustrating because people would be like, why don't you have this game? Why don't you do that game? And I'd be like, we've asked 6 times and they just say no. And it was baffling to me. I still don't really understand it. I don't understand that mentality. So that was a big challenge for us.
Especially when you think, I don't necessarily know how it works in terms of the legal aspect. I think it's still fair use, isn't it, with YouTube and things like that.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about if you review it, you can. But we weren't reviewing it; we were using it as a sport. So we went round and round, and I tried everything, and I pulled out all the contacts I built up over years of journalism. And it was just a nightmare, really. It really did for that show. There were other complicating factors, of course. I'm not saying it was a perfect show without that, but that was a nail in the coffin, sadly.
So moving away from gaming, you obviously you've gone into comedy as well as a stand-up. So I started comedy after I had my first son. And I just wanted something else. I just wanted a new project. And if that project involved going to pubs, that felt, some people learn French or take up macrame. I was like, no, I want to do something I can do in a pub.
I want to hang around in pubs. Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect.
With mainly blokes, because I haven't done enough of that in video games. So I did a stand-up comedy course. And loved it, really loved it, and then started gigging, and then I met Helen Thorne on my 3rd ever gig, and we started a podcast called Scummy Mummies, and then that surprisingly took off, and then we became a double act, and now normally we do shows all over the UK, but currently we don't, so we do the podcast and we do Instagram. And I've sort of got back into games a bit, because I've got back into games over lockdown, because There's nothing else to do, and normally I'd be in a premiere in Norwich or whatever, 3 times a week, and I'm not. I'm at home, and my kids are old enough now that I put them to bed and they stay in bed. So I've really got back into games, and I'm loving it. But obviously, me and Helen, we're just trying to keep the business ticking over until we can get back on the road.
What I was going to say is, in regards to, you mentioned you've done a course in comedy as such. What are you taught in Some Flight Max? We've had a sort of stand-up comedian in the past on the show who said they do a bit of teaching in that area. What sort of things do you learn when you're doing that?
So my course was with a guy called Chris Head, who's a comedy tutor, obviously, and director and stuff. And he's brilliant. He's a brilliant teacher. And for me, it was about, like, to be honest, I'd always known I was funny. Yeah. And even as a British person, it's a bit like, I don't even like saying that out loud. But I'm just, sounds really arrogant. But I'd always sort of thought I was funny. And one of the best piece of advice I had at Eurogamer was when my boss at the time, Pat Garrett, said to me, your writing's great, but you're trying to write like everybody else. You're trying to write like you think a games journalist would write. And when I'm talking to you now, you're funny and we're having a good time, and you should just write how you are. So that's when I started going, oh no, I can put jokes in this, and I can be myself, and I can be honest about what I don't understand or what I'm not good at. So I thought, right. So with comedy though, I was like, well, it's one thing to write jokes about games. That's a subject and that's a thing. And games are inherently funny, I find anyway. They're so often ridiculous. It's very easy. But how do I write comedy? What am I going to write about my life? Who wants to hear about, breastfeeding or what I did at Sainsbury's today? Or do you know what I mean? And then Chris's course was great because he just sort of talks you through it, and he sets you homework in increments. So it's a bit like doing the Couch to 5K. The first week you're tasked to write 60 seconds, just 60 seconds about anything. And then you come back the next week and you perform it. And the key thing is as well, so does everybody else. So if you're in a room with 28 people, chances are you're not going to be the worst. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, as well, it was such a nice feeling of camaraderie in that class. Everybody, there's lots of people from different backgrounds, different ages, different ethnicities, and they were there for different reasons. But we all came together and sort of got on and supported each other. Yeah. So the worst person in the room wouldn't get everyone going, ha, you're shit, you're rubbish, like you would in a comedy club, probably. Yeah. They would get everyone going, oh, you really gave it a good go. And I liked that one joke in the middle. That was good.
That's lovely. Yeah.
So even if you were rubbish, which I was many weeks, you would get buoyed up by people going, oh, never mind. And then they get up and someone then would be rubbish. And you'd be like, I could do this. This is easy.
Brilliant.
That's awesome. And it sounds like, it's the sort of thing that if you do go into that career path, then you'll probably cross along the way as well. So and you see a lot of people that they'll start off, and then I think Sam was saying about him and Steve, Edinburgh, where a lot of people see each other there over the years, and then it's once something gets noticed and a TV deal gets struck or something like that, then then your career could take off.
Oh, it's lovely. It's like, for example, Tanya Moore, she's taken off at the moment. She's just done Mock the Week and stuff like that. She's into Dane Baptiste, who I used to gig with, his amazing show Bamus. And so, I used to gig with those guys. And now, we had Tanya on our podcast the other week because, she was there actually the first night Helen and I met. So reminiscing about how we all used to do this terrible gig it was actually in a shipping container in Deptford.
Wow. Sounds like Fight Club or something like that, the way you described it.
Exactly. And now look at us now. Tanya, it was so cold that because there was no heating. It was a shipping container. So the audience had blankets to keep them warm. Like, it was that bad. And of course everybody feels like laughing when they're freezing cold. But it was just thinking, look at us now, Tanya's, she's on the telly, she's in Mock the Week, and I'm on This Week in Metropolis. I mean, we've made it.
That's it. The path your lives are taking you.
Exactly.
Well, the final part of this week's show, we've got a returning weekly segment called Question Mark.
Hello all, thank you for having me on again. My question is around the future of gaming. Now, I've been playing Miles Morales on the PS5 recently, and although it is very pretty and it's very fast and it's very enjoyable, it's not particularly next gen. So it doesn't feel particularly next generation. So I was wondering if there is anything, and especially your guest on today, if they know of anything that might be coming in the future that might feel or might do something that is particularly next generation gaming, like it's something that we could never have had in the past. Thank you.
Have you got a PlayStation 5?
I have got a PS5 because I'm that sort of wanker. I'm sorry about that. I've actually got one.
Well, Matt has got the new Xbox, so used to a next gen compared to me on my PS4. So.
Oh, well, that's his first mistake. New Xbox, that's basically like, that's around about a PS3, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, no, I do know what he means, and I agree. I've played Miles Morales, and I think it's a brilliant game, love it, but I agree with him. But I don't think it's that surprising, really, because we are at the start of the cycle, the start of the life cycle. So you're never going to see at this stage an amazing difference in the quality of the games. And also that the people who make the games have an issue at the moment where they have to make them work on both machines.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's reasonable because so many people have got PS4s, and even if you've got the money, you can't necessarily buy a PS5. So I think it's perfectly reasonable that we have to make these games work on both machines. So that does limit what you can do. And also, as is always the way with consoles, the developers themselves are still working out what this shiny new toy can do, and how far you can push it and how to make it. And then hopefully, as always usually happens, they start sharing information with each other and resources, and eventually, sort of in a few years' time, I usually, to be honest, when people were saying to me before Christmas, oh, should I get a new Xbox, should I get a new PS5, to be honest, even though I've got PS5, I was saying not necessarily. Like, if you're worried about the money and stuff like that, no, then just hang on, because A, it'll come down in price, they always do, but B, there's not that much point, there's not that much difference between the machines. So so you're right, is the answer, said the female Richard Osman of video games. But what would you like in the future? Well, that's the brilliant thing, and that's one of the things I love about video games is, like, if I could imagine it, or if I knew what it was, I'd be a hugely successful billionaire game designer. Like, if I'd said to you 20 years ago, oh, the next big thing is going to be this game, right, where, like, it looks like CFAX, like the graphics are like deliberately pixelated and rubbish, and it looks like Lego, and you have to like build stuff, and there's spiders and zombies. You'd be like, what are you talking about? That sounds rubbish. But you have
to mine all your own resources and then build something out of it.
Oh, and your weapons break. Great, that sounds great. You're absolutely insane. Bit like if I worked in telly and I was like 10 years ago, the next big show, people making cakes in a tent, you'd be like, what are you talking about? So
or people watching people, you will be watching someone watching television for an hour.
On Gogglebox,
Mate, if someone said to me a month ago, you will spend Friday nights playing Assassin's Creed for 4 hours while people you've never met come along and help you and chat to you, and you have a right laugh and you have a really good time, I'd have been like, you're off your nut. That sounds crackers. So that's what I like about video games, that, films and novels and music are all obviously brilliant. I'm not saying games are better. I can't be bothered to discuss whether there are. That's utterly tedious to me. But of course, astonishing new pieces of music and films come out all the time. But at the same time, that medium is sort of relatively, it evolves at a slower rate than video games, because the technology is still in its infancy. So for me, that gives an extra level of excitement to video games. I can't wait to see what these people can do with this technology, but even more excitingly, what creative ideas they conceive of, which I can't possibly predict because I am not as creative as them. So
I think with this gen, though, me and my Xbox, that I love dearly.
Me and my Xbox does sound like a rom-com.
Me and my Xbox, well, coming soon. I love the fact, and I've had an Xbox since the first Xbox, so it's just that thing about upgrading it. For me, it was the same ecosystem. All my games would be carried across, everything like that, but it was better. And I sort of liken it to upgrading my PC now. I build my own PCs, and it's that thing of you've got the same thing, but it's better. Like it will load faster, or it works more efficiently, or you can play something slightly different on it. So in a way, I didn't want like the next gen experience of. I was actually put off by the PS5 and its controller, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, the haptic controls and that's cool, but I don't know. I'm not convinced yet. Maybe I'm back in the past a little bit with that, but I like the fact the controllers are the same. I like the fact all my games are there. It just does it. I'll switch it on in 30 seconds. I'm in a game or less. Things like that. Amazing. You know, just that sort of ability to refine it.
The new controller
is fantastic.
The new controller is what sold it for me with PlayStation. Not that I mean, Matt tried to convince me to switch Allegiance, but the controller, I don't particularly like the look of the new PlayStation. I think it's not sleek enough for me where the other ones have been. But
even with these, I've got one to hand.
Got one to hand.
Just got one to hand.
Just casually relaxing, with my Xbox
there were
controller.
Subtle differences, like the texture, the triggers, and the texture in the back. It's just better. Like
but that's what I feel about the PS. I'm quite surprised you don't
just
like the PS5 controller, because I love the PS4. That's one of the things I like about it. I like it feels weightier. It feels. It just feels like a real solid piece of machinery. And I'm going to say, James, I actually like the look of the PS5. I know it's not for everyone, but I like that. Like, if I'm going to
statement.
Piece of technology that's that expensive in my house, I want everyone coming in that room to look at that. That's the first thing they see. And for me, it's got that slightly, you know, the Battlestar Galactica remake. It's my favorite TV show of all time, so I love all that. But it's got that aesthetic of a bit chunky and a bit, and all right, a little bit manly and a little bit like, but also technology,
future,
like that. Whereas the Xbox for me is just a bit like, it's just a here's a big chunk of, whereas the PlayStation is junky, but
spaceship.
Anyone listening to this without the hand gestures is not going to know what.
Oh no, exactly. The audio is going to be amazing.
So that's the future of gaming. What's the future for you look like, Ellie?
What's the future? Well, I mean, again, who knows? Well, hopefully we're going to get back on tour with Scummy Mummies. We're booking gig. Well, I say we're moving gigs. We've already moved 3 times from March to September to March to, you know, and I'm going to keep doing the games thing, because I just think it's really fun, and it has been nice. There's been obviously lots of dreadful things about lockdown, but it has been really nice to have time to get back into it. And so keep doing Ellie Gibson games, keep this coming. Just you know, I sort of feel like I've let things not go, but also this lockdown, I've gone a bit like, right, let's just accept reality for what it is. The kids are off school. We don't know when they're going to be back. We don't know how long this is going to go on. So let's just try to go day by day, right? Here we are. I'm going to, you know, try and remain calm, do some work, play Animal Crossing, drink a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc and not worry about it. And some days that works better than others, but that's the general plan.
Animal Crossing is so soothing as a game as well, isn't it? It's you can just get lost in, I'm going to pick up that shell and, you know, walk along here, and it's nice.
Although it's funny what you were saying about loading times, because I'm used to things on the PS5 now, like a huge game like Valhalla, just loading like that. Oh, I want to go to the other side of the map. Oh, boom, we're in.
Fair.
Whereas I'm now unreasonably annoyed by the fact it can take up to 30 seconds for an Animal Crossing island to load. I'm just like, oh God. And I try and go, Ellie, just remember the 80s. You used to put the tape in the Amstrad and then go and like do your French homework for 2 hours and then come back and play
and it still wouldn't have loaded.
No, exactly. How many hours deep are you in, Matt, at Animal Crossing?
Animal Crossing, not a lot, because my youngest started playing it, and then I sort of he lost interest. Then I started playing it for a bit, and I must say I did cheat by buying a load of gold. Is it in the crowns?
Oh right.
I bought a load of crowns, so we've got this house on like multiple stories and like all this stuff. Yeah, so I did cheat.
That's I'm still I'm feeling the grind, to be honest.
Yeah.
Someone
just go on eBay. You can buy like, I don't know, 20 million things for about a tenner, and then
can you sleep at night? I mean, you can buy you can buy heroin on the dark web, man. That doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Doesn't make it right.
Don't give him ideas. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for joining us. Where can our listeners and viewers find you on social media?
I'm at Scummy Mummies on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and I'm at Ellie Gibson on Twitter and at Ellie Gibson Games on Twitch and Instagram, just to make things really complicated.
You've got Extra Life podcast as well.
Oh yeah, of
I've
course.
listened to several of them. They're awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, Extra Life is a podcast I've done with Keza MacDonald, she writes about games for The Guardian. So she's actually the real Rich Dosman of video games, but don't tell anyone I said that. No, she's brilliant. So yeah, I think we're just putting the last episode of that out tomorrow. So we're hoping for another series. We'll see what happens. But, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast as well. Big fan, and it's brilliant. And I really appreciate you having me on. It's lovely to meet you and chat to you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Don't forget, if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching and listening on, because in that way you won't miss out on any future episodes we put out.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms as well. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and give us a follow, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the latest episodes and posts that we put out there. But thank you for listening and watching.
And we'll see you next episode.